I knew that when we got into Asa's mother, it was going to be a gut punch. I figured there was going to be some sort of like veil that was going to be pulled away. What you expected, it was not actually there. What Machio felt of her sister was completely wrong. She was completely off base. There was something that she was missing there. My theory was going to be around the idea that Machio, yes, was tormented by her sister, but eventually when her sister had Asa and, yes, changed, like they kind of allude to in this episode with Amity's mom, yeah, most people that knew me before I had a child, they say that I'm completely different now. People change when they have children. That's like what they were kind of pushing on Machio in that little segment in the diner was like, yeah, you have to change. When you have children, you change. That's typically what happens there. So there's an expectation there that, Minori, Asa's mother, was changed at some point, and that she was trying to mend her relationship with Machio, and that's what made the fallout with Shingo. That was my theory. What we got this episode so far is, god dang, this lady was tormented. She's still toxic. She's still like judgmental. She's still a nasty person because what seems to have broken her was the expectations of society. What society wants you to do. Being normal. Don't be weird. Stay in lines. Be a cog of the system. Don't step out of line. Be like everybody else expects you to be. That's what tormented her to the point of, what is this? Now, I want to put a lot of pause on my perspective of who Minori is, or at least what she was before she died, like right before she died. Because what we seem to get from this journal is sort of a layout of Minori's life and what she's gone through, basically. And it seems like so far, what we've seen portrayed in that journal, I'm assuming that entire segment at the end of this episode was all in the journal, because I don't see how Asa would have seen, Minori sitting there talking to her friend, and then, Machio walks in. How would we know what she was, discussing with the husband? All that stuff. I'm assuming all that stuff was in the journal, and Asa read all that. Asa's seen this raw and really broken state of her mother. But most of that stuff was early on. So here's the question mark. Was this a journal, one of many journals, and it was the early points in which Minori had Asa and all the struggles that she went through? And yes, it's going to paint a very dark picture of Minori, but then there will be a second journal. And when Asa reads that, everything is going to be clear as to sort of how, again, Minori changed over time, how her mother changed, how her mother grew to love her daughter, how she changed and she wanted to mend her relationship with Machio. All that kind of stuff is going to come up. But either way, all that aside, this is why that reaction at the end of the episode, aside from the fact that right now Asa's in grief and she's lashing out and she's, the whole thing that we've gone through before where she's like, you went off and died. She even said again in this episode, you went off and died. You went off and got yourself killed. That's what you did. You abandoned me. You left, all that kind of stuff. You lied to me. Besides the fact that Asa is lashing out, she's seeing a very raw and uncomfortable life of Minori, her mother. She's seen that her mother didn't like what she had. What child at the age of Asa, which again is I think 15, because it said 5 years and she'll be 20. At the age of 15, after losing her mother, is now reading her mother's journal that says I was suffering, that I was, being dragged down by the weight of expectations on me. I was told that I need to do this thing. I did it and I'm miserable. I have a child and I'm miserable. What child wants to read that, especially after their parents, again, passed away? This is why it was supposed to be 20. That's the thing, is Machio is she doesn't know, what should I do? I don't know if I should give it to her now, maybe let her decide. I think the best decision for Machio is to just inform Asa that it's there. If you really want to press on me, I'll give it to you, but I really think you should wait. I really think there's some stuff in there that I don't think, or just give it to the lawyer. I don't know. Maybe give it to the lawyer and let him be blamed for it. I gave it to the lawyer. He'll decide when to give it to you, and then Asa could be mad at the lawyer. Again, if that later part is for sure in that journal, no, it shouldn't go to Asa. It really shouldn't go to Asa, because again, that just it paints this realm for somebody that's grieving that their parents weren't happy. And again, I think that there's probably going to be a later journal. I think there's going to be a second one. It looked like there was multiple books in there, but there could be more than one. But either way, I hope that there's another journal that kind of clarifies, again, the idea of her mother being happier. But that might be something that they learn through other people. And it might be something that, and this would be a very, very bold for the writer, could be something that never is resolved. They never do see what Minori, Asa's mother, really kind of grew into, how she grew out of that misery and everything. I don't know, but yeah, episode 7 of Journal with Witch, really, really crazy good episode. And yes, a lot of it has to do with this perspective, seeing into the life of Asa's mother and what was really she going through. And again, really kind of shattering my expectations around, her relationship with Mchio. And it does obviously confirm a lot of what Machio's seen in the end. It's that, yeah, her sister was always about what other people want, always feeding into what other people want. And she became basically a slave to that. Her sister became a slave to the expectations of other people, which is interesting contrast to Mchio, because Mchio is painted as somebody that is running away from expectations. She's always trying to get away from expectations. Like, for example, when Amity came over and she's like, I'm supposed to be here to prod what, you like because my mom wants to know what you like. And she literally says, don't. Just tell her, to be very clear with your mom, I don't want it. Don't come by. I don't want anybody here. It's nothing against her. I just don't want anybody over here. I don't want people to bug me. I want to be left alone. I'm perfectly fine. I'm going to go to my little cave over here. You all enjoy your tea. I'm going to write my book. She finds it suffocating to be around other people. And she wanted to get away from what society wants. She's not having children. She's not dressing like other people do. She wants to do her own thing. She wants to write her books. She wants to write her fantasies. And her sister's over here going, but no, the TV said, the magazine said, my friends said, my parents said, their parents said, they said, people said, do this. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to get married. You're supposed to have children. And over time, again, we see that Mchio seems to be happy. It even implies Minori's like, how can you enjoy this life? How are you doing so well when you're not doing what people expected of you? And yet at the same time, it's still kind of falling into the idea that in the end, Minori suffered. Her sister suffered for going the route that everybody else wanted to. And it does make me kind of wonder, if that is sort of it not really being what she expected. Because as we see from what we've seen so far of Machio's, childhood and growing up, it seemed like early on, the two of them enjoyed the same things. They played games together. It was like the simpler times where they just played video games or whatever. And then it built into this point where at some point, she was offering a book. Mchio was offering a book to her sister, and her sister says, you're still reading that. Why are you still reading that? Oh my gosh, that's so like child stuff. And then she just goes off to her room. And then Machio's like, whatever, you don't want to, I'm not going to let you borrow them ever again. But Mchio was still stuck in her books, and she was still enjoying her books and doing her own thing. Again, as she said to the lawyer, this is my escape. This is my friend. This thing that took me off into a foreign land, took me away from here. Again, she was trying to get away from everything else. And then over that time, Minori just kind of grows up with his expectations that people have, eventually seemingly to having a child with a guy that doesn't seem to want to get married. That's going to be an interesting question mark. It does kind of allude to something in the conversation between Mchio and Amity's mom, that there's something happened. She says, well, did you know why they didn't get married? And she said, I didn't know until I watched the news. So apparently the news decided to air that laundry out. Now, it could be specifically, she's talking about the fact that the news itself said that they weren't married, but it didn't say why they weren't married. But I would assume probably what happened. I hope it's not the case, but it could be the idea that Asa's father had another family. That's not unheard of. I've kind of seen that story told before. It's a very unfortunate thing there, but it seems implied the father wanted to be there for Asa. He wanted to take the role as a father. He wanted to take responsibility and take care of his daughter. Now, granted, from what very little I've seen of him in the manga, which I haven't actively looked for every scene, when Asa was going to go get her hair cut just before they passed away, she went to the father. And the father's like, just as long as it doesn't make mom mad, just, yeah, it's fine, whatever. He doesn't, his activity in the family seemed very limited, which, is shown, right? Every time we see Asa thinking about her parents, oh, wait, hold on, stop, let's go back. She never thinks about her dad. Did you notice that? Asa never thinks about her dad. Her dad, now granted, most of the context of the story has been around Machio's relationship with, Asa's mother, and that triangle there. Mchio doesn't know really squat about the father, seemingly. So why would the father be brought up? So it's always the fact that Machio and Asa's bring it up because they have a shared mutual relationship there, sister, mother. Now, the father, again, is not really in the picture in that conversation. But either way, it does sort of show a sign there that Asa never really thinks of her father. Even like towards this later part, yes, technically it's because of the journal from the mother, but it's like she's not thinking about her father at all. It's completely out of the picture. But yes, it seems like she found somebody and she got pregnant, and it seems like the father was like, yeah, I didn't want to get married, but I'll be here to take care of the child. And again, it seems to imply, it hasn't really said it yet, there's a reason why they didn't get married. Right there, he's just saying, I didn't want to get married, but I'm going to take responsibility. And again, it could be the idea that he already has a wife and a child elsewhere, or it could be specifically, this would be a lot more simpler, and it would be, I don't understand why it would be kept this much of a secret, but it could be an aspect of work. That yes, there is some cases I have read and looked into where there's cases where, like, salarymen, they have a lot of expectations placed upon them from their work, and the idea of having children, the company will look bad upon you for having children, basically. They don't like that you have another expectation outside of your work, something that will get your attention away from your work. They want you to focus on your job, and so if you tell them, look, I have a child now, they're going to go, oh, crap, that means you're not going to be able to go on business trips. We're going to have to cut you out on this promotion because we need somebody that can be there. And I mean, if you have something that happens to your child, that's going to be really bad upon the company. It's like an expectation of like that you have full freedom to focus on your work. And they don't like that. I'm kind of thinking this might actually be the case because what do we see in this episode? Shingo and his whole expectations for his work. Again, it's a very interesting and unfortunate toxic aspect about Japanese business and workers in business. I mean, again, in this episode, we've seen that Shingo was completely destroyed by his job. He had this, expectation of other people, and then he failed to meet those expectations, and it came back and bit him in the butt. And he felt like a useless person. We'll get into that in a minute. It destroyed him as a person. There's a higher expectation that unfortunately, these men, especially in Japanese society, that they have upon them. And it sucks. It really does suck. But anyways, yes, so they got this child, and again, they decided to raise it together. But again, it seems like over time, it doesn't seem like Minori's happy. That she did what society wants her to do, and she went on a limb with this whole thing, and she keeps judging Machio. And I think that there's a possibility that a lot of her, criticizing Machio is really around the idea of trying to reassure herself that she's doing the right thing. She kept telling Machio, you're doing it wrong, you're going to be miserable, I'm just looking out for you. I've seen this before. I've experienced this before. People believe that you see them suffering, you see them having trouble with what they're doing, but they all want you to know you're supposed to do this. And there's a joke side of the whole thing, like you need to get married and suffer like I do kind of thing, or you need to have a kid and, suffer just like me because it's all worth it in the end. There's this whole thing where constantly people say this is suffrage, but there's a bonus to it. There's a benefit to it. There's a bright side to it. And it seems like Minori, so far, again, based on this journal that we've read so far, Minori wasn't happy with it. She wasn't happy. But again, I hope this is the early points of the journal that shows that Minori was struggling before it gets to the point where she's seen that golden end point of the road. And it could just come down to a thing where she never really found that happiness, but it's not like she regretted it. Just like what Machio runs into at some point in the conversation with Amity's mom. This idea that I would have regretted it more if I didn't step up. If I didn't accept Asa, would I have suffered more and regretted more than what I do now? Because I kind of regret it right now. Which again, like Amity's mom says, that's sort of a part of it. It's a good thing that you have that struggle there. My gosh. In the end, though, I do like the final words there and the idea that Minori, Asa's mother, does acknowledge some point, I love you. And there's a struggle there from Asa's perspective of, do I believe that? What exactly did she say in the end? It was a, do you believe that's even true kind of thing. It was like I was gazing into a dark, giant pit. Lying at the bottom was a monstrous fear. Thought that perhaps my mom never loved me. Her mother says, I love you so much. And she says, you don't know that. You don't know that. You could be lying. She could have written anything. This is like 3 things in one right here, which is really kind of interesting. The first thing that immediately came to my mind when that part came up in the episode was what Machio told Asa when she was writing her journal. Again, this book is a journal. It's a journal wrote to Asa at some point, but it's a journal in the end. What did Mchio tell Asa when she started writing her journal? Write anything you want. It doesn't even have to be true. You're the only one reading it. You can write whatever you want. And again, I think that's going to end up being what Mchio wrote about with her book that she actually published. It's going to be her journal, which was wrote about her sister, that was completely fictitious, but technically true. Her struggles with her sister that was made into a fantasy. And I think what Asa might be connecting here is to what Mchio said, that this could be a lie. This could be all fake, just like Mchio said that you write in your journal. And the reason why I see her gravitating to something like that is because people in irrational moments will often grab onto anything. If this makes me think that I'm right, or if this will feed into this fear or anger that I have or anxiety that I have, I'm going to grab it. And that'll be the first thing that she sees, and she'll grab it and go, this makes everything I'm feeling right. This is confirming what I believe, that she never loved me. Because again, right now when she comes in this room, she's mad at her mom still because she believed that her mom went off and got killed, that she lied to her saying that she'll always be with her. She lied to me and went off and got herself killed. And Mchio is keeping this a secret from me. The final words from my mom that ran off and got herself killed, she's keeping this book from me, so I'm mad at her. Screw all of them. I'm going to read this book right now. She's angry, and she wants to latch onto anything that will feel that anger. She's grieving. She's irrational, and she's grabbing onto anything irrational to make her seem rational. Basically, like she's not in a good state right now, and this is not good. This is not good, and I really do kind of struggle with, again, what all's in that journal, and will there be more? Will there be something to give her some sort of peace, or is this going to be never seeing some sort of positive light? Again, I would give this writer massive credits if they left it as that her mother was just unhappy and she wrote something unhappy, expecting that her daughter would read it later on. Or as even Mchio said herself, she may have chosen at some point not to give it her daughter. She could have went back and go, yeah, this looks pretty rough. I'm not going to give it to her. I'll decide later on. Car wreck. We don't know. We don't know. It is a tough area, but my gosh, 18 minutes into this recording, and I've just got done with just talking about Minori, mom, which is most of the episode. But it's good stuff. I'm looking forward to more. Let's get into the other stuff of the episode. Really, pretty much outside of this, we had a little bit into Shingo and the fact that, yes, confirming what I thought before, he did technically go after Mchio because he was getting a little jealous of the lawyer. So I was right there. I was actually right. That guy made him make his move. He had to make his move on Mchio because he was thinking this lawyer was going to step in. That was goofy. The little conversation with Daigo was a lot of fun. I do really like their relationship. Seemingly, again, it's mutual relationship. It's like this. Again, it's like through Mchio herself. And so there's like that little bit of barrier there. But it was kind of cool to get that little perspective of, yes, their breakup between Mchio and Shingo. Getting into the fact that he was in an extremely depressed state when they did the breakup. Daigo's like, oh crap, that was when I sent you that really mean text. Yeah, it's all right. But again, going to what I was talking about earlier, he had all that like expectations for himself and his work, and then at some point it just blew up, and he was transitioning jobs, and he was going through this really bad state at the time, and this whole thing happened. I respect this idea that, yes, he mentions that he told Mchio about what he was going through at the time, and she basically just said, oh, yeah, did you get plenty of sleep? Yeah, I technically did. Oh, that's good. It's like, again, it's that whole aspect of like, yes, this is a really bad point for him. And even like Daigo's like, what an idiot. Why would she say that? You were in a bad state. You have to be comforted in a moment like that. He's like, no, that was good. That's why I liked about Mchio. She grounds me. She keeps me from like overthinking things and getting too into the weeds and, getting into this massive state of depression, just completely getting, drowned in it. She pulled me back out and said, did you at least get some rest? Yeah, good. Move on. Like it's very a simple way of looking at things, which does sort of, for a lot of people, like Daigo's kind of putting here, it's minimizing what he was going through, but that's what he needed. That's really what he needed to get back on his feet and kind of keep moving forward. It was really cool. I really like their conversation that they had. The stuff between Mchio and Amity's mom, again, I like a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of perspective of Mchio herself and accepting this role that she's in. I like to see that kind of contrast between her and Amity's mom. Amity's mom was actually great. I'm glad to see that she's not a busybody. She does seem like she legitimately cares. Again, the fact that they've known each other for so long, it seems like they had some sort of communication happening between the parents, all that kind of stuff. But I did like this little element here. Again, the idea of Maki herself trying her hardest to, help Asa and be her guardian and acknowledge this idea that, yes, I'm trying my best, and it's what it means to be a mom. I like that kind of awakening moment that Makio's having, the idea that, so you do kind of change over time as you're taking care of children. Oh, maybe that's what my sister went through. I was like, yeah, you change and you go for the better because you want to be best for your children. And yes, I think Makio is starting to acknowledge that, that's maybe what happened to my sister. Again, because when she went to the house, she's seen things in there that wasn't there before. Again, things that were not normal, that it seemed like she was hiding. I think this episode we're getting a little bit more picture as to why she had those weird clothes and wasn't really normal in that closet. There was things about her sister that she was wanting to do differently that society doesn't want her to do. Unfortunate the stuff that they got into around the idea that she, of course, doesn't want to be a parent. She's a guardian. She can't give love. But I do like how Makio puts this, and the idea that, yeah, parents technically have like these set things they want to do for their children and how they want to raise their children, how they want their children to see the world, how they want to act around other people. They're trying to instill upon their children what they expect of their children. They want them to respect their elders. They want them to, go on and be successful. They want them to open the door for a lady, that kind of stuff. All these little things that people believe they bestow upon their children. Yeah, even their own like religious beliefs. They want to give some of that guidance to their children. They obviously want their children to flourish in their own way, but they want to put these little guideposts that help them in the way that they think will be beneficial to them. And so, yes, there's all this stuff that, of course, Makio's sister and her husband, Asa's father, Asa's mother and father would have want to put upon her, and unfortunately, those are lost now. And I think what Makio is here saying is that she doesn't want to erase that or get in the way of that. Whatever is there, I want to make sure I deliver that for her and nurture that, but I can't bestow my own beliefs there. I want her to be whatever she wants to be and whatever she got from her parents. That's my role as a guardian. She's putting a massive barrier there to make sure that she's not stepping in. I kind of wonder if there is an element here where Machio is specifically doing that because, again, her sister wanted to push things upon her and she doesn't want to do that upon Asa, or because it'd be one of those things where she literally doesn't want to be bothered by it, and she feels like that's a responsibility she doesn't want to take upon herself. I think we may get eventually to an idea where she could, question if that's the reason why she's not stepping over that bound. I don't want to have that expectation upon me. We can see. But I love that moment where Amity's mom said that, yeah, her sister was pretty hard on herself. That cut over to Machio seeing her sister pointing at herself, I'm like, oh, this changes everything. This changes everything. That was literally in the episode. That was the point of like, oh, here we go. Here we go. We're this is the start of Minori's life. This is the start of Asa's mother and how she, not just Machio, destroyed herself. Machio, you think you had it bad with your sister? Your sister had it worse with herself. She literally, again, destroyed herself and the expectations that people had upon her. It gets so good. This episode's so good. This episode was so good. Outside of that, though, we had a little brief, once again, a little snippet, a little tease about Amity and who she likes. The two of them walking around and Asa once again bugging her about her boyfriend. Heard you got asked out. Did you go out with them? You getting a boyfriend? What, you don't want a boyfriend? Eventually, Amity getting mad and saying, I don't want to talk about it. Drop it. I don't want to talk about it. Oh, so you want a girlfriend then? Seriously, drop it. Seriously, drop it. Again, at least they kind of showed a little bit, that little snippet of that movie that Amity got from Machio. Something that kind of shows her that whoever you love, it doesn't matter. It's not weird. You're perfectly normal no matter what you love. And again, fully implying this idea that Amity really does like Asa. I'm wondering when they'll actually get into it. I'm wondering how long it'll take for them to actually get into it. I unfortunately don't think it's going to pan out. Not the idea that I think Asa has anything against, being in a relationship with Amity. It's just more of an idea that I think Asa herself doesn't really want any of it. I don't think that she really cares about any of it. I'll be interested to see what she really thinks about it, about Amity herself and what she thinks about her, but I have to put a pin in that one. But yeah, I think that's, wow. I think that's everything. That's our weekly Yap Fest of Journal with Witch. My gosh, I love this show so much. Can you guys tell I love this show so much? I just love yapping about this show. There's just so much in here that is so It's so juicy. It's so heartbreaking. It's so interesting, and I love digging into it. So I can't wait for next week. I can't wait for next week. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, hope you enjoyed this Yap Fest. If you did, hit that like button down below. If you like this content, you want to support channel more, become a member. Until next time, you'll take care.